Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another week of Wieland. And had to mute the cell phone there that I'm watching chat on. And let's not go too far, Box Fox. I don't know if I'd call it a good book, but it is a book. We can be very clear on that one. Um, so tonight, it is Thursday night. It is July 14th, and we are going to look into chapters 10 through 18 this week, one more next week. Before we get to that, though, just want to remind you if you are listening in right now, that we do hope you will make sure to follow us both on Twitter and Instagram. Um, Facebook, we pretty much leave your coaches and your parents, but Twitter and Instagram for you. And make sure you follow us on there at least one more week of Wyland memes, and then we'll go back to making fun of varsities and honors and you know the hardest people to make fun of, and that's scholastics. I can't figure out one thing that's kind of wrong with them. They're just kind of perfect, aren't they? So if you're scholastic out there, there's nothing to make fun of you about. So, but honors and varsity, it's easy, and we'll get back to that after next week's book talk. So before we begin and go ahead and in the chat, if you're already joining us, go ahead and let us know what school you're from. If we do have a coach in the chat, let me know. I'll make you the moderator in case we get, some honors kid who decides to go berserk or something. But yeah, so seeing Deer Park, Friendswood, Dobie, Irving, awesome. Some Briscoe people, Tompkins. I have no idea how to say Powtow. I need to figure that out next time I'm around that team. Trubisky, Reedy, awesome. Know your coach. She's wonderful. More Dobie. Is it Paytow? Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Um, Fox Fox. Do me a favor. Whoever from your team last week won my notes, that very valuable prize, my notes. I can't find y'all's email on your, because it's just like contact on your website. So have that person or just you reach out to me via DM on Instagram or Twitter, and I will send those notes for you and your team. Be happy to do that, but only for if you win the question. And Dugan, you're already the moderator in the chat already. I guess it kept over from last week. Awesome. And all of King High School's here all together. Awesome. That's great. So yeah, that my final Wieland meme for this week was that very gruesome looking Grim Reaper going after Louisa and Catherine. I just didn't have the heart to put the kids on that third door. That just I'm just very glad that Brown did not let us get to know the kids in any real way before he has them die. That would have been even more heartbreaking if he had actually introduced those characters in some way. And so the big question tonight is who did it? I think it's pretty clear, unless you are more in line with what Clara's thinking, then it might be someone else. Um, and then who's next on the list? And if you've finished the book, please don't spoil it for anybody else. Who's next and who actually did the killing? Cody's there. It's either Clara's next. Oh, that's a possibility. It's funny. Maybe I'll save that for the end because yeah. So let's kind of get into this right away here. Last week we talked about themes of the Gothic and the alien versus the person that belongs. This week was the anniversary of the Alien Act and Sedition Acts, which should give you a clue as kind of what the mindset during this time is, that foreigners are kind of a threat and can be. So kind of hopefully you made that connection in your head between the Alien Sedition Act from the Social Studies Guide and this idea of alien versus belonging in the Wieland world. Jayla, I feel bad that I honestly didn't really feel some way about Louisa dying because she serves no purpose in the book, and that's again, this is why when Box said this is a good book, it's a book. I don't know that's when you have a person that you're going to kill off there, you're supposed to kind of make the reader like feel something for them, so they're upset by it. Not have someone completely there for no reason other than to be murdered, to up the body count, as it were. Bad horror movies do that, like, right? They just throw random people in there just to get killed by the killer. Okay. And so, but this week, though, we have two questions we're going to look at. One, how good is logic reason if evidence is incomplete? That's kind of the big theme of the first 4 or 5 chapters we're going to discuss. And then, where does Theo's madness come from? Where does Wieland's madness come from? That's one of the other central questions or ideas of the book, is this idea of, first off, the elder Wieland, Clara and Theo's father, where his madness came from, or whether it was even madness, whether it was just supernatural intervention. Was it punishment from God? Was he just mad? And then where does Theo's come from? If indeed he actually is mad, who knows? So that's what we're going to kind of look at this week as we go through the chapters and kind of go through this book. And we have questions at the end, and those of you that answer those questions will get the extremely valuable prize, he says sarcastically, of my notes for chapters 10 through 18. By the way, if you did win last week, I sent those to your coach today. I had to track down everybody's email address again, except for Taylor's. And so your coaches have those, and they'll pass those on to the team. Just hopefully ask them. So awesome. Dragon Wolf. Pleyel didn't have to do Claire like that. And that was probably my favorite meme of the week, was the crazy conspiracy guy. This is why you were in a relationship with Carwin, as he pointed to all the different things. So let's dive right in, which is the theme of chapters 10 through 14 is Clara and Pleyel. We have 5 chapters here to get through Clara and Pleyel arguing about whether she is actually in a relationship with Carwin or what's going on. It's, again, back to, is it a good book? It's a book. There. So let's start with chapter 10. And my notes for chapter 10 are incredibly short because you're in a room. We leave off from chapter 9. She's in a room. She finds Carwin in her room. He professes that he was going to dishonor her, which is just 1700s code for sexually assault. But he decides not to for the voices. And what does she do? She stays in the room. Probably the least believable thing you could imagine is, I'm going to stay in the room. I'm not going to go get help. I'm not going to seek out my brother, Pleyel, anyone. They keep emphasizing how muscular Carwin is. Yes, there's like, and not muscular in the way we would think of in today. For those of you that go to the gym, you see the guys, posing in the mirror. But by 1700s standards, rather strong and muscular by 1700 standards. So she locks herself in this room and proceeds for one entire chapter to think about what just happened. And so, and at the end of chapter 9, he says, well, I'm going to send myself away. I'll never see you again, and everything will be fine. And so she goes in. But then, during chapter 10, she hears noises outside and wonders, who is this? Is it Carwin come back? But then they go into the other room and never leave. And then she sees Carwin from outside her window, who she thinks is Carwin. Pretty sure it is, because she can tell his shape and figure from a long distance, apparently. And so that begins. And then we get to the next morning, when the person who went into the room is not Carwin, it's Pleyel. Pleyel, in the room that he stays in on occasion, has come home and wants to see her, seems very agitated. And here begins Pleyel's upbraiding of Clara for all the things that he has kind of created in his head. And so there's a really interesting part at the kind of the bottom of the page. I believe it's 100. It's bottom 100. He says, The matter, O wretch, thus exquisitely fashioned, on whom nature seemed to have exhausted all her graces, with charms so awful and so pure, how art thou fallen? From what height fallen? A ruin so complete, so unheard of. So basically, you completely ruined yourself. You're terrible. You're dishonored, everything. And then he goes, why should I upbraid thee? Could I restore to thee what's been lost, basically? Like, I don't even know why I'm upset with you. I can't even help you. You're so far gone. And he just lights into her and won't really explain what's going on, just kind of that she's been dishonored. Yes, called her a wretch. Um, and then, basically they have this big thing where she's trying to figure out what the heck's going on, and he's not really being very specific. Just, you know what you did. That's essentially Pleyel's argument all the way through chapter 11. No, he's not going to give her room to speak, because what is for her to say? She's completely dishonored herself. There's nothing he needs to hear, right? This is someone he has been friends with for years, someone he has professed to care great deeply about. And when you care great deeply about someone you've known for years, the last thing you want to allow them to do is to explain themselves. So Pleyel see at the end of, I can't remember if it's the end of chapter 11 or maybe it's another chapter. Basically, I think it's at the end of some other chapter. But yeah, basically at one point he basically says, all I can do now is just pretend like you never existed. I mean, that's kind of where Pleyel is. Like, he's so upset and so disheartened by what's happened. That yes, Pleyel just went crazy with these chapters, which there's kind of one of the themes of this book is that people just kind of lose their heads all at once. For real? No. Well, I mean, maybe Pleyel has some reasons, but who knows? And so Clara doesn't know what to do. She's alone in this house. She's just been unbraided, as the book says. And so she goes to see her brother and Catherine and finds Catherine. It's like, oh, yes, Pleyel came. He was very upset and went off to find your brother. And so, oh, crap. Now he's told my brother everything that's happened. And I've got to talk to my brother, right? And so she goes to find her brother. And her brother's like, yes, he has laid out this whole thing about what his evidence is and everything else, and how could you do this, Clara? And then Clara explains what's going on, and Wieland comes around. He's like, oh, okay. His evidence was different, which again goes back to that question I asked at the beginning, which is, how good can your logic and reason be if your evidence is flawed or if it's incomplete? And so, but her brother comes around. It's like, okay, yeah, I guess, and you're my sister, and I love you, and I can't imagine this to be true. But Pleyel is very upset, and not only is he upset, he's leaving. So if you want to go talk to him to figure this out, you better hurry. And so, really, the question at this point is, especially once you get past 12 and 13, go to 14, is who's the villain? And I kind of asked this question in some of the memes. Who's the one doing the most damage to her? And I put a poll on Instagram, an Instagram story this week on this. And well, what does the chat say? Who's being the biggest villain at this moment? Hubin says maybe he's being protective. Okay, but I don't have a problem with that when we get to chapter, I think it's 13 or 14, when he explains what he did. Pleyel's the worst. I remember so many of you last week were like, oh, I love Pleyel. He's great. He's wonderful. And now I wonder how many of you now are like, oh, God, he's a jerk. Yeah, he's being a jerk, not listening to her. King of the kingship of nerds out there putting us through this. Okay. Yeah. All right. He lived in 1700s. He wasn't, this wasn't going to, he wasn't planned to make this a competition novel 200 years in the future. Well, then, because he doesn't do anything, Clara. Some of you still on Carwin. I feel like missing something, and someone none of us expect. Maybe. And that's that other meme I put out there of kind of Pleyel jumping to conclusions and Carwin, like, and again, remember the Gothic novel aspect. Part of the idea of a Gothic novel is that you have this pure and innocent feminine figure at the core of the story who is kind of pulled and kind of awash amongst the waves of the plot, right? She just kind of is tossed from one end to the other by what other people are doing, and there's nothing she can really do. Like, that's just kind of part of a Gothic novel. Um, and then we get to the part where she finds Pleyel and she's so preoccupied, she just walks right into the room and he's packing. And this was my favorite part. Like every time she was about to do something, Pleyel, she faints, right? She gets lightheaded. Later on, she faints again for much longer. Again, it's that Gothic feminine figure of that she's so pure and innocent and delicate that even littlest bit of stress just causes her to collapse. And so she goes in and says, "All right, fine, Pleyel. Tell me what you know. Tell me what you've heard, what you've seen, what has proven to you that this." And here is where I have the problem with the overprotective Pleyel part, right? So, kind of starting going back, we'll kind of need to rewind back into the chapters 1 through 9. Um, is that he kind of sees that she acts differently around him. And remembering back to chapters 1 through 9, he does strike her quite oddly, right? Like his she hates the way he looks. She describes it in very gruesome terms. But his voice is very intriguing, and like remember she cries at the sound of his voice. Like so clearly she's reacting to him. So he files that away as remember he kids her, maybe she has a crush on him. And then we get that he snuck up behind her and overlooked something she was writing about midnight and the summer house. And from that, he jumped to a conclusion like, oh, who is she meeting at midnight at the summer house? That's a very weird thing. Should she be going there? Could she be meeting? And then we're going to go A plus B equals something weird in Pleyel's head. And then he's thinking about this, and the day of the play rehearsal where he was supposed to show up, he is so kind of like, okay, so maybe they're in a relationship. I shouldn't get involved. Like, this is none of my business. Yes, I had feelings for her, but no, I will just let things be. But he's so kind of distracted by it that he doesn't come to play rehearsal. And he decides just to go back to Clara's and like, okay. And then he sees the figures and follows him. Oh, I forgot. Then he finds out that Carwin is a murderer and a thief. Okay, now here's the overprotective thing I have an issue with. The moment you find out that the person you care about might be in a relationship, or at least maybe have feelings for, someone who's a murderer and a thief, he does everything but rush straight to her. And then when he gets there and he sees them, or what he thinks may be together, or hears voices of that's them, he doesn't rush in a la a hero and to save her and to pull her from Carwin's arms. He crouches behind them and listens to their conversation, where he finds out this is the last part he exposed her that how she professed her love for Carwin and her whole loyalty to him and everything else, and her awareness of Carwin, and she said, according to Pleyel, said things that only Clara could know. And that's how it came to that conclusion. Again, back to that question of how good is reason and logic when your evidence is flawed or incomplete. And we all know, because we're reading this, that Carwin and Clara are not in a relationship. Like, clearly Carwin has a thing for her. We know that. There's something going on there. But Clara has no interest in Carwin. In fact, she is in love with Pleyel. And so, yeah. And so, yes, Carwin is clearly a creep and a weirdo and has many, many bad things going on for him. But the person doing the most damage to Clara's reputation at this moment is Pleyel. He's the one who's kind of not seeing the most important piece of evidence which is, I have known this girl for a very long time. This seems out of character. Something must be up with the evidence I am seeing. And so Pleyel lays out his case to Clara, and I believe it's at this point that he says, all I can hope to do is pretend you never existed. And, there are moments through these chapters where she thinks that things are getting, maybe he's seeing her side, he's understanding that maybe he still cares for her, but in the end, he leaves. And leaves her in his apartment. And basically, you stay here as long as you want. I'm out. Great. And so that's 10-14. So 5 chapters to get through Clara and Pleyel having an argument about, is Clara in a relationship with Carwin? What's Pleyel's evidence? What the heck is going on? Pleyel jumping to conclusions. So that was the biggest chunk of 10 through 18. The next 2 chunks are a bit smaller because we get a lot happens. Like, right? I know some of you, and me included, were very frustrated with 10 through 14 because it didn't feel like the plot was moving along very quickly. It was a lot of hand wringing, a lot of shouting at each other, a lot of fainting, a lot of waking up from fainting. And yeah, okay, you should don't spoil the book for the rest of us. All right, so chapters 15 through 16, I am titling Clara and Carwin because this is where Clara and Carwin are going to have their kind of moment, at least something of a moment. We'll get more of that after for next week. So she gets a letter, or note left for her, basically saying, "I need to talk to you. I want you to meet me at your house at 11 o'clock tonight." Okay. Now, from everything that's happened, why would that seem like a good idea for her? Why would Carwin even seem like that would be a good idea? That she would even suggest that, yes, okay, that'll work. Sure, the guy who was hiding in my closet for hours, yeah, I'll meet you at 11 o'clock at night. Seems like nothing bad could happen from that. And so she does, and she decides, okay, and she spends this whole time heading back to her house trying to figure out, all right, what do I do? Oh, I clearly can't go back to my house and meet him. That would be insane. However, and here's the big however that she eventually comes to. There's only one person who could fix all this, and that's Carwin. If Carwin could tell Pleyel, tell her brother, no, nothing of this happened. We don't know what Pleyel's talking about. Carwin can fix it. And there's kind of the temptation for Clara is Carwin is the key to fixing all this. So Clara doesn't go home. She goes to her brother's house. She gets there, and where is everyone? It's late. They should be there. The door's not barred. What's going on? And she looks with it. No Catherine. No Wieland. She looks more. Still nothing. And then finally she finds Louisa. It says, and again, here's Louisa serving a role that a servant character could have served. It says, hey, where are my brother and sister-in-law? And Louisa's like, I don't know. They were in the parlor last time I left. And it's like, oh, this is weird. They were very distressed by your absence and where you were. And like, okay. And so she leaves and says, well, fine. I'll just go to my house. Again, questionable decision making here. Your brother and sister-in-law are missing. So I'll go meet the guy who almost dishonored me in my house at 11 o'clock at night. Seems like awesome. So she goes back to her house, and she gets there, and she sees a light in her house. Now, she's not there. Now, there's a servant, but it's late, so the servant wouldn't be up. Sees a light. Okay, someone is there. Someone's in my house. And we get a long part of chapter 16, basically her at the foot of the stairs deciding, do I go up? Do I not go up? Do I not? I mean, what's the, should I go up there? I don't know. So it could be somebody up there. Could not be nothing. I don't know. Could be something. Then she hears a voice. Hold, hold. Or she doesn't go up. And then there's nothing. And then she decides to go up. She goes up into her room. No one's there. She goes over to her desk and sees the note. Carwin has left her another note. The basis says, he was upset that he found someone else in her place, that she didn't follow his instructions, like reprimanding her. Basically, like, we will talk later. It's like, okay, that's very odd. And she half expected to like turn around and he'd be there, like right, like jumping out of her, like a jump scare moment of a scary movie. But she thinks about her closet, like, oh, is he back in the closet? Hmm. Okay, Human, that's funny. She got ghosted. Uh, and then she's about to go to the closet, but then she sees something, and she pulls across the curtains to her bed, and there is Catherine's body. Catherine's dead. And of course, Clara assumes from the note and from the body, the dead body in her bed, that Carwin found Catherine in her bed, killed her, then left a note basically saying, I found someone else here instead of you. We'll talk later. Or like, I'll get you later. I know, poor Catherine didn't do anything. Like, eh. But if you are going to have a gothic novel and you need people to die, somebody's got to die. And so we get this moment where she's convinced she knows who Carwin did. And then title 17 and 18, Claire alone, because at this point, Claire is kind of on her own. Like, everybody she's known has been scattered. Her brother comes in. And she's like, oh, how am I going to tell him his poor wife has been killed by this dastardly Carwin? And her brother seems to like be upset. And she's like, oh, he must already know. Oh my God, what has happened to my, wonderful, reasonable, rational brother? He has been struck by this grief and death. He's muttering to himself. He's speaking to people that aren't there. His body is all tight. He's gripping his fist into where like his fingernails are leaving marks. And it's like, oh no. And then they begin hearing noises outside. People gathering. And her brother turns and leaves. She's like, oh no, what is happening to my brother? What has happened to my family? Carwin, if only basically I'd said something earlier. Yes, Clara, if only you'd said something earlier about all the weird stuff that was happening. Yes, some of this probably wouldn't have happened. But people come up and they see the body and she's trying to explain to them. They're asking, where's your brother? Like, oh, he just left, where is he? And they're trying to get her out of the room. It's basically every crime show that you've ever seen where the police show up and the family's there. You're like, we need you out of the room. You're clearly emotionally distraught. Let's get you out of here. Let's talk to you. And she's like, no, I need to care for my brother. I need to care for the children. I need to care for Louisa. I need to care for there. And they're all like, that's not going to be a problem. Um, let's just get you someplace by yourself. We'll take care of you. Don't worry. We've got all this wrapped up. Human, I swear this girl's mentally fast but physically slow. Yeah, okay. And so, like, we got this covered. We'll take care of all this, and we'll see after those people that are totally 100% alive. Don't worry. And you just go, and we'll get you taken care of. And then finally she figures out that they're all dead. Carwin has killed them all. It's gone on a murderous rage because Claire wouldn't meet him. He went and killed them all. And as she's leaving, this one of kind of those interesting moments. There's actually, again, is it a good book? I don't know, it's a book, but there are some good parts of the writing, and here where it's not a liniment remained. Basically, she wants to kiss Clara, but literally nothing is left of her face that's even remotely resemblable, like recognizable. That's the right word. And yes, Pumpkin Clouds, they really lied that badly. Like she saw through, it was like, oh wait, they're all dead, right? Yeah, we tried keeping it from you, but yeah, they're all dead. And so yes, whoever killed them left them so bloody and murdered that they weren't even recognizable. Then Uncle Thomas Cambridge shows up, her mother's brother, and she's like, I know who did this. Clara is, I know who did this. I have information. And Uncle Thomas is like, okay, but we've already found who did this. And, it's kind of, he's already confessed everything else. And she's like, oh, you're talking about Carwin. It's like, yeah, we haven't seen him. But go ahead and tell me, what you know. And she does, like, okay, yeah, and maybe. And there was that part, and this is kind of goes to that question of where does Theo's insanity come from? And Uncle Thomas kind of very casually says, maybe it was God, maybe it was science and genetics, maybe it was karma. Who knows? But yeah. And she demands, I want to know who confessed. I want to know who's been punished for this. And he has a newspaper and and this is one of the more colder moments of this. He answers the newspaper and says, you may read it at your leisure. Like read all about your brother killing your entire family there. And this is where last week I started bringing this up at the beginning of this episode. That I brought up scary movies last week and kind of horror movies and kind of some of the tropes of those and stuff that are very similar to the tropes of Gothic literature. But this storyline is very reminiscent of the old Halloween movies of the brother that begins killing family and just won't stop, and we'll kind of see that as we go through chapters 19 through the end of the book. Um, if Clara saw Catherine's body and she didn't see the rest, does that mean the Carwin killed Catherine and the other guy killed the rest? Maybe. We'll see. Um, yeah, it was kind of obvious who did. How does she not know? No. Again, I think this part is believable. Like, right? You have this villainous figure that's entered your life that's basically disrupted and destroyed it. It's much easier to believe that he's a killer than it is, especially after she knows he's an accused murderer, at least according to the law in Britain. Um, it's much easier to believe he's a killer than your own brother who you've grown up with and know that, yes, he's kind of moody and yes, he's kind of morose at times, but, he's never said, oh, wouldn't it be great to kill people? Like, that's hard to believe as a sister, and that part is kind of believable. Carmen probably found Catherine, and when Claire was discovering the Wieland was in the process of butchering the kids, or he did fine. Yeah, possibly there. So that's kind of where we leave it is, and that's kind of the interesting part of this book is that we know who kills everyone by chapter 18. Yet there's another 9 chapters left, and but we don't. And we kind of have a answer to part of the mystery, but not all of it. And where does Carwin fit in this? And what the heck happened off off the page is the way we refer to it, meaning we didn't see it happen. Well, we'll get a little bit of flashback in the next chapters about kind of what happened after that, or what happened before the murders that kind of led us there. And that's kind of how the book ends, is by kind of explaining the mystery part of that. And of course, the last chapter is about figuring out why Louisa was even in the book, if for any real reason, which I'll go ahead and spoil it for you. There is no reason. So that's the last chapter. And that's where we'll head next week. So we have questions now. So man yourself right next to the chapter. Any questions? Because we have a little extra time. Any questions about chapters 10 through 18 that you weren't quite understanding or sure about what happened or why it happened? I'll do my best to kind of cover those before we get to my questions for you to win your copy of my notes for chapters 10 through 18. And I'll go ahead and warn you, chapters 10 and 11 are incredibly short because not a lot happens. So, anybody having questions? Book becomes enjoyable after chapter 16. Really? I found 15 to 18 to probably be the most enjoyable chapters to read just because so much happens. Nishant. So how many details do we need to memorize? Well, I kind of want to ask, are you new to ACTEC? And I mean that in the most wonderful way possible. Yeah, the short answer, Nishant, and I think everybody else will tell you here, is you need to memorize them all, like as much as possible. Like everything's fair game. Yeah, Nishant. Okay, so you're new to okay. Thank you. I was trying not to be sarcastic there. Everything's fair game, Nishant. It's now. I will tell you this as I read it, and I think it's probably most of you read it. There are things that lend themselves easily to be asked questions about. Like last week, I asked you like how many columns are in the temple out there. Like that's an easy one to make a question about. Um, that one, it's not probably be on a state test, but like a district test or some test your coach gives you. Yeah. Knowing people's names, knowing their relationships to each other, knowing which things happen first, second, third, fourth, fifth in order. Um, yeah, the tests get harder, they get more detailed. When I was looking for questions, one of the things I looked for, did they say the name of the newspaper he handed her? Because I could totally see that being a state level question. Um, and so all that's kind of fair game. Like, there's nothing that's not fair game, basically. Um, and yeah, pumpkin clouds. Don't forget the essay questions because I think, especially with the literature part, those lend themselves well to do very good essays on for the test. And it's usually the one when I was coaching, I really push the literature stuff hard because I feel like you can write a really good essay on the literature stuff much more easily than say on sometimes on the social science stuff or the economic stuff. Um, Science stuff, my kids generally usually had a pretty good grasp on to do essays for. But yeah, the literature stuff is yeah. All right, so get your keyboards ready as we go to questions. Um, and really, it is. I'm looking at the official chat that's in there. It's whoever gives me the first answer. I promise these notes are they're not worth millions of dollars. I promise you. So don't feel bad if you don't get in there in the first. So here's the first question. There's a delay. After Pleyel accuses Clara and leaves, she goes to find her brother. Where does she end up finding him? Where does she end up finding him? Nope, not the temple. I really should add production value, include like the Jeopardy theme or something in this. Nope, not his house. She goes there first. Nope. Nope. Pleyel and him meet kind of out while he's on a walk. Nishant, very good. It's her house. Awesome. She goes back to her own house, and there's her brother kind of looking for her. And he's walking away, and there he is. So good job, Nishant. If you'll tell me what school you're with. One of the other things about this novel, you got people walking around looking for each other a lot. Nishant, you are Marcus. Awesome. All right, question 2. Where does Clara go before going to confront Pleyel again before he leaves? After she leaves her brother, she says, I'm going to go confront Pleyel, stop him from leaving. But she goes somewhere else first. Nope, not Pleyel's house. Miss Bainton's is correct. Dragon Wolf. Or no, that's not the first person. Sorry, Pumpkin Clouds is the first. Pumpkin Clouds, what's your name? That's very helpful. Here, Reedy. That's fine. I'll just send it to your coach. Because I know her. All right. Okay. Question 3. Where in her bedroom did Clara find Catherine's body? Where, I think I may have mentioned it as I was talking. I was trying not to give the answers away as I talked, but I may have. In her bed, Woozy is correct. What school are you from? Dobie, awesome. Yeah, that was when I first read that. That was a little confusing because it kept talking about curtains. And I was like, wait, curtains. And then I was trying to figure out what it was. And I was like, then sorry, I had to go back to the 1700s and remember that they kept curtains around beds to kind of help keep in the warmth. So that is the confusing part of that. All right, last question. Two-parter. Who was the only witness to the murders, and where were they hiding? So there's two answers here to get this completely correct. Who is the only witness to the murders, who actually saw the murder and the killing, and where were they hiding? So you got to have both answers in your response. Nabiha is correct. It is in the closet and the maid. And what school are you from, Nabiha? Plano East. And here again, this is kind of the issue with the book. That maid, that servant who witnessed the murders, could have served every purpose that Louisa did, and you would have one less character in the book, and probably would have made the book better. So I guess I should have been Brown's editor, I suppose. Well, any last minute questions before we move on? So next week we will look at chapters 19 through the end of the book. I believe there are 9 more chapters. So our next is on July 21st, again at 6 p.m. Now, I did want to remind you, again, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, but also don't forget our amazing summer study photo contest. Either post it on Twitter, post it on the Act Deck. You can send it to us in a DM, and we'll post it for you. But show us a picture of you on vacation or you with your Act Deck friends studying this summer, and you will win fabulous Act Deck swag and a gift card of substantial value. So make sure to send in those. We've got basically 4 weeks left of summer break. Oh, she isn't? Oh, okay. I did not know that. Thank you, Pumpkin Clouds. But I'll reach out and figure out who it is now. And I will get your notes to them. So, but yes, send us your summer photos of you studying with Actic friends, without. We've had photos already from all over the world submitted to us. But even if it's your own backyard, it still has a chance of winning. So yeah, the most creative. I love seeing photos with multiple ACTEC kids in it all studying in the summer. So all those are great. So make sure to submit those and win a fabulous prize for the summer. And yeah, that is all we have for tonight. If you have anything else, I'll wait 30 seconds and see if anybody has a question or something they want to say before we leave. Oh, thank you guys for showing up. So see you next week. And all these end up on YouTube whenever if you want to listen to them again. And so, yeah, y'all have a great week, and I'll see you next time.